Most people these days have heard of Jiu Jitsu through Joe Rogan's mouth, and that's fantastic because more people still get to the prize regardless of what they heard. So did I say more or most? I think that a lot more people get there than they would have, but not for his recommendation and whatnot.
Yeah, he's got a lot of listeners.
Definitely. And he brings it up a lot. And, I definitely have had, as a jiu-jitsu instructor, a lot of people say that they came because they had, heard it on one of these, either one of those two podcasts, usually, Jocko and Joe Rogan. So
Right.
this definitely happened in my experience. Have you had folks say that?
Yeah, a lot of people I've talked to that because generally anybody I have a conversation with, I invite them to come train.
Yeah.
And they usually say, oh, yeah, I heard about that on Joe Rogan, or it's usually Joe Rogan, sometimes Jocko.
Yeah, more people for Joe Rogan, surely, because it's more of a open kind of dialogue, not an open dialogue. He's like doing proper interviews with people from all different walks of life, and Jocko's a little bit more regimented, I guess. It's like more military centered, um, and people of that kind of ilk, and they're both good, different, but that's aside from this point. The two big misperceptions that Joe Rogan has regarding Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that the Jiu-Jitsu from UFC 1 has evolved, and the Jiu-Jitsu itself at that time was basic and less technically savvy, and kind of like a caveman version of modern day jiu-jitsu that's used in the UFC. So he's mistaken about a few things there. The jiu-jitsu that Royce used in the first UFC was Royce Gracie jiu-jitsu, and his strategy for fighting bigger, stronger people. Royce was using that strategy. He was using basic techniques because the attacks were basic. He only needed to manage the distance and exhaust the other guy, and then his techniques, which were already razor sharp, were 10 times sharper. Even though they appear to be basic, they're 10 times sharper at the end of the fight because the person has less energy, and it in turn looks more dominating and deadly, because it is at that point. The guy has no potential to continue, and a submission at that point is either they choose to let you go or hurt you. But he used basic setups because he didn't need to use advanced setups. He did, like a big step over to mount a few times rather than the knee on belly to the floor tight slither that we do today, that we teach. So does Joe Rogan think that the technique for mounting in 1993 was to step your foot over and to the mount, and that Royce did that because he didn't know the other options? He needs to what he needs to understand is one point that I think, if you reflect on, that it's easy to comprehend. That Royce is at this point, for all practical purposes, he's a coral belt. He wears a blue belt, the navy blue belt, but that's his choice because of his dad. And every technique that the champions of today use was taught to them by somebody who learned it from Royce or Gracie or somebody that trained with one of them. Of course, there's, sambo and these other techniques, but he's talking about jujitsu. He's talking about modern day jujitsu, and that it was basic and then evolved. Every technique that exists today, every technique, or rather, every technique that Henner and Hedon teach, which is over 600 techniques, they're unique to that particular jujitsu system. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. And I think I can change belief on that too. Um, every one of those techniques, over 600, was taught to them by someone, one of three people. Well, all three of these people, well, you know, one at a time. Elio Gracie, Royce Gracie, Royce Gracie. There were a few other guys throughout that time period that played roles, but they were far, far down the frequency of those three. So does Joe believe that Royce wasn't a true high level master of the technique? He taught these techniques to those guys, to his nephews, and he crafted them into who they are today, which is basically two perfect technical jiu-jitsu specimens and replications of Elio Gracie, even though they're much, much bigger.
So
Which
why use techniques that you wouldn't use on a opponent that knows jujitsu? Why just step over rather than do the
tight
way
slither.
the way that we were taught to go from side control to mount?
Well, why would you step over to mount? Because you have absolutely no belief, concern, fear. No, not fear. Hoist wouldn't have been scared if the guy knew, the technique as well as he did. But no potential in Hoist's mind for the necessity to do the tight slither to mount. Because, as jujitsu people, we feel that mount coming like 30 seconds before it actually comes. It's not even visible to anybody, to me, to the person doing it, to anybody in the crowd, but he and I can both feel that that's what he's thinking. You know what I mean by that? That person in 1993 was not thinking what Hoist was thinking, and Hoist knew that for a fact. So it wouldn't matter if Hoist stepped over. It's a little bit quicker than that slither. Hoist just wanted to get there direct. And the necessity for stepping over is that the person might react technically to prevent it. No one was going to do that. If anyone, I guess at the time, it would have been Ken Shamrock, and his reflex at that time was when under fire, retreat to the knees. He rolled to his knees, as did everyone else. He rolled to his knees for a slightly different reason. It wasn't just to protect his head, like in fear that Hoist was going to beat him up, that he wanted to roll to his knees to start to stand. He wanted to build the house and get back up. And um, no matter what you think of wanting to do that, it's not technically the best choice to do that, to roll to your knees. It's not a good choice at all, unless it's a midpoint that we just stop there and then keep going. So even a skilled grappler of the day didn't understand really jujitsu. He didn't understand jujitsu. He understood grappling, or rather base, pressure, some submissions, defense was pretty good at the time. But you notice that Hoist stepped up the technique level, I guess, when it called for it. Ken Shamrock attempted a submission. Nobody else did that, and Royce had to defend. Royce defended properly, which is not taught in the beginner course, that defense. And Royce defended properly. He there's 3-4 things that happen there that are not beginner techniques, because Ken Shamrock wasn't a beginner. He was a tiny bit more advanced, and on top of that, super strong and athletic. So when it called for it, Royce did increase the advanced nature of his jiu-jitsu. Dan Severn presented a different threat. He was putting his chin in Royce's eye. He was trying to crush Royce's throat with that tripod heavy forward pressure, and doing stuff like that, like just that stuff they do, a base conscious opponent. And hoisted some defenses in there that are not taught in the beginner program. Now, I don't fault Joe Rogan for knowing what is or isn't in the beginner program, or any of it. He's in his own jiu-jitsu lineage, and it's excellent. You have trained there plenty,
Yeah,
and
yeah. I've trained a couple of years with the 10th Planet guys, and
yeah,
they definitely have a really interesting, like sport focused curriculum.
absolutely, and they're fantastic. If any of those guys are listening at this point, they would say the rubber guard is it manages distance. It is it fulfills most of the requirements to be a self-defense okay technique. But if you can't move your body around like that for whatever reason, maybe you're like 75 years old, maybe you are pregnant, maybe you are big bellied, maybe you just don't have flexible joints. What if you can't do that? You can't uh, you can't depend on this particular technique for everybody, and that's what we kind of need. If we're going to teach it as like this is going to have this result, then it needs to have that universal possibility. But regardless, they're fantastic, and I think that the rubber guard works for me because I can kind of bend my legs around a little bit, and all of those techniques are hardcore. They are uniquely technical in a different way, and it's fantastic.
Oh, they're a lot of fun, drilling and learning and defending against and trying to implement against a new jiu-jitsu guy versus an experienced jiu-jitsu guy, especially experienced 10th Planet guy. So it was definitely a lot of fun to try these techniques out. And I made the main reason I wanted to go train with these guys is just because of the popularity of leg locks.
Yeah, which they do for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of focus on different entries, but also, and this is my favorite because I'm all about defense, is some of the escapes
Yeah,
and defenses. So those are probably my favorite classes there.
and they like to that those submissions are legit. Ripping somebody's crotch apart is an effective technique. And that crotch ripper technique, I know that we were taught defenses, but I was never taught to do that to someone. But, I think it can be done, and possibly by everyone, because it's your whole body against the quads. And those are strong muscles, but the 9 times out of 10, the human body is stronger than those quads in that position. Yeah, yeah. I would tap from that. I have not tapped from that because not many people have tried it. But I've always been like watching or waiting. I'm always waiting for somebody to try to stretch me out like that because I really want to see what that's like. Um, but I've done it, the defenses and in those classes, it's super uncomfortable, and I definitely would tap. Um, but let's see. Darn, I was saying, let me get back to this.
We got a little off track.
Man, yeah, I took it there though. That's my bad. Let's see.
We were going over the misconceptions of you were
Of
talking about
Joe.
Joe Rogan saw what Hoist did in the early UFCs, and you're saying that maybe he's unaware that either
He's
he had used these I guess like just stepping over would be like you'd always tell me not to do that because I think I originally was doing something similar to that, and then
Yeah.
you taught me the basically it's kind of like the like the seat, not the seat belt, but like kind of like your knee is staying connected the entire time as it's dragging across the belly, and then windshield wipering your leg across.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Yeah, that's it. And Hoyce knew that technique that day better than you or I at this moment right now, and he didn't use it. He knew what I'm saying is, and I'm going to get back into what I had typed, but what I'm saying is, Hoyce knew that tight slither at that time, just like he knew all of the other techniques that he didn't do at that time, which the guys today are using. Hoyce knew them then. Hoyce didn't need to use them. Why would he need to? He wanted to use the least amount of energy, force, technique. He wanted to use the least amount of anything and still win. And he did that. And then it makes it easy to interpret that that's all that Hoyce had kind of deal. Or that's the top level jujitsu of the day. No
Which
way.
wasn't the case.
No, if Hoyce was to fight today, or if Hunter and Hedon were to fight today, it would look like UFC 1. As long as it was a no time limit, no rules, or very little rules, very long time fight, because the safest strategy is the one that Hoyce used. He played it smart. He was even smarter than people gave him credit for because he could have did it more aggressively and probably tapped everybody out in the first 20, 30 seconds. No, no.
I don't know if you saw Crone's last fight.
I did see that fight.
We got a lot of criticism.
Hang on one second, Roger.
No
Hang on.
problem.
Our food just got here. Ashley's in the room if you want to say hey.
Hey, Ashley.
Hey, Roger. How's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. Just having fun, chatting about jiu-jitsu. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
She's been listening to podcasts whenever she's able to.
Yeah.
So let's see here. Okay. These thing. I'll make this as quick as I can, Roger. They
No
didn't write
worries.
on the packages what was what here, so we're trying to figure it out. This is mine, and I have to do one like that.
And then you take that.
Yeah, yeah. This is yours.
Okay.
It's delicious.
Okay.
Chipotle. And these are for them.
What'd you guys get?
Have pickles, sir. Okay.
What'd you guys get to eat?
Subway.
There you go. There you go. Hey, Subway. We're looking for sponsorships.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Man, it would be a bad decision to get within a million miles of Subway, and they didn't do anything wrong, but it's just so easy to be tarnished by something that heinous.
I know it sucks that when you think of Subway, you think about the former spokesman and his evil
Predilections.
crimes. Yeah,
Yeah, it does, man. It's worse that he's a piece of crap and he did that. He was around so many kids and he did it for so long as kind of like the Barney type character, which probably helped him in his um, goals,
yeah,
whatever you want to call it. I'm getting mad just thinking about it, man.
right,
He
right.
he had a long time where he had this access to his drug, and he had potential victims that were entirely trusting. So he was victimizing the least capable of defending themselves, and that's the bullseye for a jujitsu guy.
Yep.
And not that we want to hurt him or do anything to him, but that type of person that victimizes the weakest people are the bad guy most times in the class. A lot of times it's bigger, stronger, more athletic, but we also we teach these techniques about intervening, and they're just as important because we we don't stand for bullying, period, if it's me, you, or anybody else. And that's something else that's not universal in jiu-jitsu. And what a shame that these techniques are not being repeated and passed on. It's a total shame because, sorry, go ahead.
I know. That's why I don't think I could be a police officer because if I saw like something like that, I would just make me so angry that there's a real risk that I would
Address it right there.
exactly and probably kill the guy.
Yeah, he's done in that moment. I I do believe that the most amount of aggression and ability would be directed at that person. And like if we're intent on just going 110% and our intention is to break everything, to hold the choke as hard and long as we want, as like as we can, to now I gotta say hit the person, as hard as we can, with no concern to breaking our hands, to just full on give them every, like all the guns that we got, and that's a lot of guns in jujitsu. So not necessary, for that a guy like that, but there's a kind of idea in jujitsu that if the arm lock well, let's say if the choke requires um, 6 pounds of pressure, whatever the case is, I don't know this, but if it requires 6 pounds of pressure, then we want to only use that 6 pounds of pressure. But in reality, if it requires 6 pounds, why not squeeze 12 pounds? Is kind of the thought, because we're doing it technically. We're not muscling the choke. So if we're going to do it technically, why not squeeze a little bit harder?
You don't want to undershoot it and then it not
Yeah,
work.
yeah. If it's going to work in the long run, I guess this could be controversial because you know, the prevailing wisdom in our lineage is that if you have to hold the choke for 20 seconds, one of two things: it's not working, or it's just you're holding it very, very loose, but it's still actively choking. So if it takes that long, so be it. It worked. I agree that if the thing was successful, then great. But some things are successful not because they're good or accurate or any of that, but because either the other person's tired, they weren't actually trying to defend it, they didn't care, they are just training and it doesn't matter type of situation. It's not always the one reason. So what's your opinion on that? Do you think that you should hold the choke as light as you can, as long as it's effective enough to choke thin, or hard, like tight?
Yeah. Well, it just kind of reminds me of the first tournament I ever went to, and I like kind of burned my hands out
Yep.
because I was trying to collar choke the guy in the first round, and it probably would have required less, but I was full. I was giving it the full mustard.
Your hands got tired.
Yeah, all my fingers were stressed, like I needed to tape them up because it was like I was using my back too, but just holding on and I guess I didn't think the choke was working at first, and then
Yep.
it was apparent that it was working.
Now that's interesting. I'm
Yeah,
trying
all
to
my
think.
fingers, it seemed like all my fingers were, I don't know,
Tired.
tired, numb, sore. My grip strength was a little depleted at in the second round.
Did I ever talk to you about this?
Never. I don't think we did.
I think we would have immediately went over this, because do you still do the choke the same way?
I, if I ever think the last time I've done it, it was different because I didn't have the same effect. I think it was a combination of being excited because it was the very first tournament match, and so it was going to be slightly incorrect. It was like the white belt version of that move.
Mm,
So I don't burn out my fingers when I do that. Um, but it's come up less and less. Usually, people will create a frame whenever you put a hand in the collar.
yeah, yeah, they will. I definitely experience many different defenses, but usually they're pretty easy to blow through those defenses if you really know how to freaking grab somebody's collars. And by the way, that the panties guy, he knew it. He knew it better than me. So,
Oh, he knew how to blow through that defense.
oh yeah, yeah. I was using all the right defenses, and he still finished the choke. It was amazing, and he had on panties. So, um, unreal.
I honestly, I know you talk about it, or we kind of joke about the panties or whatever have you, but um, and that sure is like a distinguishing feature of this grappler. But
Yeah.
it's you kind of say it in a way of like it gives him like something extra by his choice of dress wear. Like what if and hear me out here. What if he stumbled upon a genie? This is probably not the case, but what if he stumbled upon a genie and his wish was to be excellent at jujitsu, but the caveat was it only worked while he was wearing red panties.
I would take that, wouldn't you?
I don't know. I don't know that I would. I don't know that I would. But obviously, this guy is, for sure, like trained many, many years, and I guess that's just his choice of underwear. Even though many people have said that it was kind of like a European men's underwear and not, women's lingerie. So I don't know. Is
Right.
this a speedo? Was this a speedo? I keep on wanting to believe it's like a honest mistake, but you always use the term panties like it's like something, I don't know, like you would find it like Victoria's Secret women's section.
Well, the difference between me and the rest of the guys is certainly because I know what it was. So I know that I can say that they didn't get a good look. Because if they did, then they would have saw what it was. His pants weren't tight because he didn't pull them laterally. The strings, I guess. He hadn't pulled them laterally tightly, so
Uh,
that when he wrapped it and tied it, the pants were still fairly loose. So after however many rolls, he hadn't messed with his pants, and his gi was still kind of like, flopped out. He's not one that was like, let me retuck it, retie my belt, and all that. And it was visible from 3, maybe 5 feet away. I'm one of the coaches in the class. So I'm standing there right next to him watching him. And I didn't notice it after a roll with me. I was standing up. He was on his knees and facing away from me towards the door. And, I had a perfect view, perfect look at what it was. And it was like frilly, like there's no question about whether it's
So definitely women's section.
definitely would. I mean,
So weird.
I've never heard of a guy wearing like frilly panties, which we know what panties look like. We know what underwear look like. Even if it's some European, like we can try to define it some other. But this is panties, my friend. This is what you buy in the women's section, and in a special part of the women's section, which is like like Conor McGregor section.
Well,
They got
we've seen like videos of like let's just say like Brazilian
oh yeah, oh yeah,
basically Brazilians fight against speedos. So it wasn't in a situation like that. It wasn't like that in that style.
not at all. I right at the beginning of my jiu-jitsu experience was the end of that phase of training. But I was there for it and I saw it in person as well. And it didn't like it, wasn't a fan, but it's not the same thing as that. It still has some element of manliness. I don't know what it is. I don't like the Speedos, not whatsoever. Never was comfortable training with somebody in Speedos because they didn't wear anything other than the Speedos.
It's crazy.
And crazy.
What about the
Um,
guy at Europa, the kid that stripped down to his boxers and did a match?
oh, yeah, I remember that. He won, right?
I don't remember if he won. I just remember like, dude, like you can. I
You can
mean,
do.
come on, you can see all your junk, man. Like, what the heck is wrong with you? It just made me uncomfortable. I was like, man, you really gonna strip? Like, what's next? You gonna strip down naked? Like, he practically was naked.
Right, right, right. And maybe there's some nah, we don't need to strip down naked. I'm always trying to look for a way to make something more real, like if that's what Elliot wanted to do, make it more realistic and more real. And can we do anything to add to that? I don't know. I don't know. He
I
had
don't
pretty
know.
good
That just kind
sense.
of reminds me of like Eric Andre.
Oh yeah.
He like on his he just came out with a new season and that dude just likes to rip his clothes off for a gag.
He's man, that's exactly my type of comedy.
It is so
It,
funny. I was laughing so hard, man. I didn't know if you know that he came out with a sixth season, but it just happened.
I heard something about that. I forgot about it, but I'm excited now all over again. And that type of comedy is kind of like, from what I hear, when people smoke marijuana, that their mind kind of just jumps from like, here we are talking about something, and then all of a sudden we're 20 minutes later and we're talking about something else, and I have no or they have no recollection of it. And that's the type of uh, joking it is. It's just like discontinuity and non segues and straight out of left field. Like it's like and it is an evolution on Mr. Show. Um, what was that other one with the with Reggie Watts? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, see, I never watched like Mr. Show. I never watched any of
No.
those other ones. I just stumbled
Um,
onto Eric Andre, and it was because he was in Disenchantment, the
right.
animated series. He was like a little demon character named Lucy.
I think Mr. Show. Um, let me see. What year were you born?
86.
And Mr. Show was on the air starting in 1995. So you would have only been, what, 9?
Right.
Yeah. And this would have been late night HBO. And so it's not, it's not.
I wouldn't have stumbled on it. I was watching like Cartoon Network those days.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's understandable that you wouldn't have fell into that show.
My favorite show was like Steve Urkel, Family Matters.
Right, right. And this was quite different from that. But I know that you would like this show
I'll
because you
definitely
like.
check it out. I've since I've watched all the Eric Andre shows, then I'll have something else to watch.
Are all of his shows on online somewhere?
I believe it's on YouTube TV or YouTube because I pulled up the YouTube app and I was able to watch it, but I have YouTube TV.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. That's right. That's right.
That's what we use instead of cable.
Ah, that's right. And that's a little bit more inexpensive and easier to use, and get more bang for your buck.
Yeah, no, I mean, Sophia wanted it. You know, we like share it with like, so we'll watch it here, and then her parents also have it, and so we can watch it at either one of our houses. And
Yeah,
this is one of those deals. You can watch the football and the local news and things like that. So, like
yeah.
my
So
father-in-law watches like NASCAR and like drag racing, things like that.
so we highly recommend it for people to do the same stuff we do, and you'll be watching these shows too.
Yeah, I'm sure you could pull up though either that show on there, and if not, I think I got AT&T, so then it Max is included with AT&T, so I can probably watch it on there, or one of those two. If not, I'll find it.
Definitely, and I think it's on, at least quite a few episodes are on YouTube,
There you go.
so you can easily hit it.
Yeah.
The other show that I was talking about, as far as Reggie Watts, he wasn't on Mr. Show. This was years later. Looks like 2012 to 2016 was this show, and it was called Comedy Bang Bang. Do you know that one?
Oh, I do. Yeah, I do. That is,
But
it's goofy. It's not as funny as Eric Andre show, but it's kind of on that same like nonsensical
yes,
humor, and it is. Maybe I don't laugh out loud watching that show every single um, episode, but I at least get a chuckle or two every episode.
definitely. How about Between Two Ferns?
Yeah, no, and I saw the movie, um, but I kind of found out about that like later. I think the movie was coming out, and then I watched some of the shows, and then watched the movie.
Okay, all right.
Pretty ridiculous. It's funny. Just I guess they're in on it, but like he just has the balls to say like the most uncomfortable things to them.
Oh yeah, no, they're in on it. You can look up, like outtakes with them actually reacting, like him and Will Ferrell going back and forth about him. Like Will Ferrell's like, "Hey, listen, fatty," or something like that. And he's like, "I'm not fat." And then the next, it just goes straight to Will Ferrell is like red faced mad. He's like, "If you'd get the fat out of your ears." And then he's like even getting smaller, in the chair. But dang, man, I totally went off in a weird direction there. Let me
Yeah,
get back to.
yeah, that's okay. Let's get back on track.
So it was about the misperceptions, not the misconceptions, misperceptions. So Joe Rogan has perceived this to be the case, and I had gotten up to the point of saying that the techniques Henner and Hedon teach were, for the most part, taught to them by their dad, grandpa, and Hoyce. And Hoyce created them basically as as professors create their students. And I think that's where I was up to. So I say, does Joe believe? No, I went past that. He Hoyce taught those two guys, crafted them into the specimens that they are, which implies correctly as we know from today, being students and teachers, I guess. Well, definitely. Which, um, which implies correctly, it was as a result of that one-on-one time with Royce and learning jujitsu the proper way in order to pass it on the proper way. That old school jujitsu was only used because that's all that was called for. The attacks are what determine the defenses, and the lack of rules and time limit is what determines the exact step-by-step approach that you take. But believe you me, the reason that Henner and Hedon are so good and they both know so much is because the people who taught them were equally as good and they knew so much. And anything else is a mistake in perception. That's what I believe, that Jiu-Jitsu hasn't evolved. The attacks of the opponent have evolved, and then the Jiu-Jitsu guys are just stepping it up to defend those attacks, which Royce would have done as well.
Well, I brought up the Crohn's last fight, and a lot of people use this fight as an example of why Jiu-Jitsu doesn't work in modern MMA. And Joe specifically referenced this fight.
So this is a different mis this is a misconception because Joe is wrong on this. Well, he's right in a sense, but he's wrong, and I'll tell you why. Jiu-Jitsu works, period. Any Jiu-Jitsu works, and if it's done properly, it doesn't matter what the other person knows or is, it can work against them. But Crone is dealing with a 5-minute time limit to get something started, and then he has to reset and then try to get it started again. He's got 3 chances at this. The other person knows exactly what Crone wants to do, and all they need to do is to prevent that and in the moment land a punch or two. And over 3 rounds, it appears that Crone cannot accomplish anything he wants to, and he eats punches the whole fight. Well, it's just that the opponent is extremely skilled as well. And in 15 minutes, he can, be effective. But Crone doesn't, in Crone's mind, he doesn't care about the time limit. He's still fighting the same way. And it just so happens that the time limit runs out. And in that time, Crone was not able to close the distance and take the fight where he wanted it to go. But that doesn't mean that Crone wouldn't have done that in the next 20, 30 minutes and then choked, arm locked, whatever the case, his opponent. It just means with the rule set, you need to be extremely athletic, a master of the techniques, aggressive, and win driven. And we aren't, I'm not lumping myself in with Crone, but our belief system is the same. We aren't programmed to do that, to try to blast through a fight as fast as possible. Of course, we train purple, brown, black in that kind of fashion to blast through people. But when they're good too, you can't really blast. It's slow and methodical. So time is a necessity of Helio Gracie Jiu Jitsu. And this is the most important part. If ever you hear somebody say Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and Gracie Jiu Jitsu are the same. Now, I'm not even talking about self defense and sport Jiu Jitsu. I'm just talking about them saying that. Well, Gracie Jiu Jitsu is Helio Gracie's Jiu Jitsu. and I used an S there, Elio Gracie's Jiu Jitsu. So if we're talking who invented Elio Gracie Jiu Jitsu, that is it's a non-question. Elio Gracie created Elio Gracie's Jiu Jitsu. He learned what he learned, and then he put his spin on it, his flavor, and then repeated and taught that and the methodology for like almost 100 years. And when he talked about it in Portuguese, he would say, meu jiu-jitsu, which is my jiu-jitsu. He wouldn't say our, like if they are talking about soccer. Elio Gracie, in the same breath, would have said our soccer, Brazilian soccer, the style we play as Brazilians. So you see the difference there? Brazilian Jiu Jitsu versus Elio Gracie Jiu Jitsu. Even those two aren't really necessarily the same. Only Elio Gracie Jiu Jitsu is Elio Gracie Jiu Jitsu, and anything else is that person's interpretation of his Jiu Jitsu. Our goal is to get as close to that representation as we can. And that interpretation is what's lost on Joe. Something in there is being missed by Joe. His belief that you should learn what works on trained killers to be able to defend yourself in a street fight. That, we talked about that today.
That'd be kind of rather than focusing on a lot of the common things that an untrained or maybe not very well trained, maybe they trained a little bit, might use against you, and focusing on those techniques. If you're trying to train for anything a pro MMA fighter would use, then you have a lot more training, and your focus is going to be kind of spread out very thin.
It would be equal to someone going through college, getting a medical degree, their MD, doing their residency, working as a doctor for the day that their child has a cold. It's extraordinary overkill. The child having a cold needs the smallest kind of response. You don't need a gigantic response. We're going to put him on the ventilator. We're going to get an IV. You don't need that kind of response. He's got a cold, he'll be okay. And
So instead of learning all of the techniques an MMA fighter would learn, you combatives should take care of a lot of the issues we'll run into.
combatives will take care of not getting hurt. The blue belt will take care of hurting them. But all those techniques, what use would they have been against Gerard Gordo? Let's think of he was on Gerard Gordo's back. Gerard was controlling his hands, so he couldn't pull him out and start the process of finishing the choke. That's not a technical defense to just hold their arms, because you're going to get tired of holding. And so Royce's responses were not super high level responses because he wasn't getting super high level attacks thrown at him. So, and it would have been completely unnecessary, and he would have probably disappointed his dad if he did a whole bunch of unnecessary stuff, just flashy techniques, hip throws, landing in the mount and then popping somebody. If you watch the Gracies in action fights with Royce, on occasion, he steps it up a lot. He does hit the person hard. He does these interesting positional controls that are throughout stripe 1, 2, 3, 4. And he does use those techniques, but it's different. He's being playful. He's not being filmed in front of the world, and it really, really counts. This is for the Gracie name. So he's going to do it the most, like, arrow directly into the bullseye as he can get it. He doesn't want to do anything that's off that mark. And that's what he did. And that is a strategy. It's not a lack of knowledge or basic jujitsu. I don't even know why that is, why Joe Rogan thinks that. What do you think? Is it because the modern day guys look so amazing, or what is it?
I mean, it's a good question. I mean, you do have a lot of high level guys competing, and they have to be extra sharp. So maybe, I mean, if you compare it, to those early videos to what we have now, I mean, you really see some amazing things. So that's the only reason I can think of.
Yeah, so he's judging no rules, are very low rules fights with no time limit or very long time limit against an event where being as flashy as possible, according to Dana White, like as entertaining as possible, is more important than winning the fight. And we were not brought up in our jiu-jitsu life to believe that whatsoever. And you have to in modern day fighting. So you have to violate the rules of Elio Gracie. And it doesn't look the same. And if you're willing to do that, then there's no problem with that. Like Brian Ortega, he appears to have really amazing modern jiu-jitsu, right?
Right.
But is using the same techniques basically, depending on the attacks of the person. So because it's still punch-driven attacks, it's still elbows to the face, So he's using Elio Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. He's just mixing in his, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, black belt techniques in there. Royce didn't need to. Ortega is, because that's the name of the game today. So it's just a misperception, and I don't want people to believe that, because the jiu-jitsu back then was, as the techniques were the same. There were a few techniques, of course, that they brought in and refined, but overall we're talking a 600 plus system of techniques. And I would be curious to know if he believes that Elio knew or didn't know all of those techniques, because he did. He knew all of those techniques. When they filmed those old, like, I don't even know what it is, like Super 8 video, or it's just like black and white, and they're doing these techniques, classic Gracie Jiu-Jitsu techniques, which is very, very flavored at that time with the Japanese kind of spice to it, and which Helson still has, by the way. I don't know if you noticed that. Like his arm lock setups and a lot of his finishes have that classic Gracie Jiu-Jitsu finish, and that's awesome. I really like that.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me that you'd say that.
It's effective, and it continues to be effective, and it's because that it's effective. I mean, it is what it is, but the question was if Joe would, you know, would he think that those guys specifically back then, the brothers, Carlos and Elio Gracie, did or didn't know the techniques of modern day jiu-jitsu. And what modern day jiu-jitsu is you can define it whatever you want to define it as UFC rules and jiu-jitsu mixed in, or sport jiu-jitsu rules.
Well, what about like Gordon Ryan? He has like no limit matches, so no time limit matches, but there still are rules. There still is a rule set.
Right. What about him?
Well, how do you think you would fare against Hoist or Hickson in a no time limit jiu-jitsu match?
Well, Hickson now is like, is almost 60, so Hickson probably would be defending, and um, Gordon Ryan would probably exhaust him now because Gordon Ryan is a black belt under a Gracie. He's legit as far as modern day jiu-jitsu.
But what about Hickson in his prime?
Hickson would have tapped him. Hickson would have tapped him. He would have been able to tell him how he was going to tap him, and he would have still tapped him. And how do I know that? Because Hickson did that to everybody, every champion, everybody that's ever rolled with Hickson. Nobody's ever said, hey, I went by there and tapped Hickson like twice. You've never heard anybody say that. You never heard they say they caught him once. So are we to believe that Gordon Ryan is so good at that family's jiu-jitsu that he would have defeated the best example in history? Not hardly. He would have tapped Gordon Ryan, and I believe he would have blew through him exactly the same way he could blow through me and you, because it doesn't matter with Hickson at that time. He is as far as the human brain could take jiu-jitsu. He has taken it, and nobody else in history has came that far. So Gordon Ryan would have to be in that category as never getting tapped out. He's lining up black belts and tapping them all in 10 seconds, and telling them which technique he's going to use, and they still can't stop it. He's beating everybody, but he's not doing stuff like that. So there are levels, and Gordon Ryan is way, way up there. I don't think anybody else is up there with him now.
Not
But
that I know of.
no, but Hickson was up there and had stepped over that skill level long before he was the best in the world. So that's maybe a shocking statement to sport jiu-jitsu people. But if they don't know about Hickson, then they need to look Hickson up, and they're going to be amazed.
Well, it's funny. I mean, that is kind of a hot take. I mean, because we all know Hickson to be the greatest. But even I believe Chael Sonnen told a story. So this is like a third party.
Yeah,
But he said
Royce.
that he spoke to Hoist, and Hoist said that I believe he said that Hickson couldn't tap Gordon Ryan, and Gordon
Reverse.
Ryan couldn't tap Hickson.
I think it was, he said that Gordon Ryan wouldn't be able to submit Hickson, but he didn't think Hickson would be able to take down Gordon Ryan, something like that, right?
I believe something similar to that. Yes, it's been a while since I
But
heard it.
it definitely wasn't. Hickson would just tap him a bunch of times. But I think that Hoist was being a little political right there.
So he's being polite, basically.
Yeah, and Hoist doesn't have he has a history of just saying kind of not polite things, but Gordon Ryan is his cousin's black belt, and isn't he a Henzo Gracie black belt?
I believe isn't the lineage like isn't Danaher like a black belt under Henzo?
Danaher is, but I thought that Gordon Ryan was as well.
I don't know if he got his black belt from Henzo or if he got his black belt from Denner,
Let
but
me
I guess
see.
I'm assuming Henzo.
Either way, it's really going to be close. The techniques. I'm surprised that old Danaher doesn't do the self-defense system. Since Henzo is so familiar, a master of it. I wonder if he just Danaher chose not to do those techniques or what the deal is.
That's something I have to study more. I mean, of course, we see all the sport matches, and I've seen like Gary Tonon's fights.
Right, right. Gordon Ryan has a fantastic defense system too, and I am a big fan of Gordon Ryan, and I don't know anything about what they actually know or teach or do, so he might well know the self-defense system well. I don't know. Um, he definitely knows the sport jiu-jitsu, even if he uses better rules, I guess, in my opinion. But it's still fantastic jiu-jitsu and just ridiculously good defense. And that defense is what makes him capable of doing such good attacks. Um, but dang, I don't want to finish up on without finishing what I started. But let me see here. I'm looking at Gordon Ryan. I want to see exactly who his lineage. We know his lineage, but I want to see exactly who did what.
Yeah, I don't have. If I had the ability to look it up, I would. But this is kind of like me really guessing at this point, so my memory might fail me.
Well, let's see. What would that question be? Who promoted Gordon Ryan?
Yeah, or Gordon Ryan's lineage. If you Googled that,
Um, what would you think about Hickson and Gordon Ryan in their primes?
and it's just a jiu-jitsu match. It's not Vale Tudo.
Well, it we'll have to we'll have to decide both. So sport jiu-jitsu rules that Hickson would agree to as well, something like no time limit, and uh, but it's sport jiu-jitsu. No, let's say sport jiu-jitsu. Gordon Ryan's rules, and then no rules, no time limit.
I mean, it, I've never got to see Hickson compete in person. I watch old videos, of his matches, and I think the level of competition that he faced is not the same level of competition today.
Right,
But having seen Gordon Ryan compete live and really just, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know if he broke a sweat. I mean, he just ran through ADCC and then, had the super fight afterwards. So it
right.
was actually really impressive.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I agree. He is fantastic. But what's your final verdict?
I mean, it would be hard to bet against Hickson.
Right. But if you were going to do it, it would be Gordon Ryan.
Yeah,
And his
I mean, there are quite a few really good grapplers coming up, but yeah, no, I think Hickson would find a way to. I think Gordon Ryan would definitely be um, the biggest challenge, but I could see Hickson finding a way to beat Gordon. But then I could figure, I could see Gordon catching him. If it was unlimited time limit, I think I would have to go with Hickson though. But I mean, there's definitely a possibility that Gordon could catch him in something.
Absolutely. How about a no rules?
Well, that's the biggest thing. Like, so Hickson has been tested and he's undefeated, and Gordon has not fought a single MMA match.
Or real, challenge match as far as we know.
So I would have to say Hickson.
Yeah, I would be more, I would say without a doubt, Hickson in that one because it's his game, you know. Um, but I think because Jiu-Jitsu grew up in the time of Hickson was the the man, to say the least. Nobody ever questioned that he was the best. And just to think in my mind anybody could defeat him is a far-fetched idea. But, my brain was programmed a long time ago. It says that Gordon Ryan has two lineages. I guess he got the black belt from two different people.
Okay. So who are the two?
So lineage number one, Carlos Gracie, Elio Gracie, Carlos Gracie Jr., Renzo Gracie, Ricardo Almeida, Tim DeBlas, Gary Tonin to Gordon Ryan.
Okay,
So
Gary Tonin.
Gary Tonin, the second lineage is a little closer to the source. Carlos Elio, Carlos Jr., Renzo, John Danaher to Gordon Ryan.
Okay. I'm not sure exactly how that will work.
I don't know either. Is that two different systems? I'm really not familiar enough with the modern guys. I know who they are, kind of. I guess I know Gary Tonin had a fight, I think, with Halleck Gracie, as did Gordon Ryan. Just a rolling match. Tim DeBlas is a kind of real popular midpoint between sport and self-defense kind of guy. So I don't know if there are different belief systems in the two lineages, or if they agreed to do this, or what the case was. I've not heard of, I guess, anybody else getting a belt from two different black belt instructors. I guess didn't go. Maybe Josh Barnett.
Well, you can't
But
believe everything you hear on the internet. It could be just Gary Tonin.
It could be, man. It could be. I believe John Danaher is in his corner a heck of a lot.
Yeah, that's his head coach now.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what role every person has. I have a wildly unpopular opinion on Danaher.
Oh, that'd be a good one to close this episode out.
Yes. And,
This is gonna be the shit talking episode. It's like
it is.
talking crap about Joe Rogan and Gordon Ryan and now John Donner.
And, I should say for sure that everybody that I've mentioned is a jiu-jitsu black belt, and I'm not. And they would all defeat me in any rules, in any, I believe that all those guys are top notch. But these are my
Indeed.
beliefs, around that. And it doesn't change the belief that the person can beat me or not. It's still the same. My belief is the same. But as far as what I believe about John Danaher, I don't I don't care for his re labeling of of techniques that were taught, under a certain name or whatever, the mount, side control, these type of deals. Every technique wasn't named. Elio would just say, here's what you do from here. But he did name some things, the
Yeah.
matale, the upa, and all that. Those techniques, he called them these things, So I don't like the calling control pins. I find that it just rubs me the wrong way. It's too close to wrestling, and I just don't want to give people the wrong impression. I don't want my brain to react to the word and in any kind of negative way. We kind of have like a love affair with these techniques, and if I think of it with the wrong name, it's kind of like thinking of this girl and calling her like Sharon or something. It's not cool. But that's a small thing. Separately, he's student of Renzo Gracie and not teaching self-defense. I don't know about, like I said, I don't know if he's doing it or did it or anything about it. But I know I'm not seeing him teach any zero. I've not seen him wear a gi other than like maybe one old picture or a video or something. So those few things, not wearing a gi. And what was the other one? What was the first one?
Good question, because I was thinking about he definitely did train. I forget the name of his new student that also trains in the gi, and he helped him get ready for a
Gi fight.
either a tournament
Sorry.
or a fight in the gi. But like I said, I don't have Google on my fingertips, so I couldn't confirm it.
That's right.
But you were talking about the renaming of moves.
The renaming of moves. Everybody has the right to do whatever they want to. I have to say that too, but I'm just kind of like a purist or whatnot.
I believe he has a
And
video series where he wears the gi.
no, I believe
I had to have seen that.
I believe that he's fully knowledgeable in the gi, but he's not wearing the gi, and that's just another thing that rubs me the wrong way. He you can totally not have the same opinion. I'm just giving my opinion, and it's no more valid than anybody else's. These are just things that he's very popular and yet not displaying gi and no gi, in my opinion, enough as a like he's a big time representation. He's the face in part of jiu-jitsu in 2023. And I think that's a big, huge freaking obligation and responsibility to do it like perfect. You got to really watch what you say, do, recommend, anything, everything matters. And the other thing was that he's not teaching self-defense. As a student of Renzo, who is a master of that, it's not fair for him to do that if he learned those techniques, because that's kind of like, we're just holding it for ourselves kind of deal if you're not teaching it.
Well,
So
just to play devil's advocate, you could say
yeah,
that maybe he's focused on sport jiu-jitsu training, and he's maybe if New Wave switched gears and they were getting ready, say like Gordon was going to get into MMA, maybe he switches it up to more of that style.
right. Would you say that he, no matter what he's doing, has an obligation to at least keep the flame lit of what our ancestors wanted to, continue? Does he have an obligation as a black belt under a Gracie to at least talk about that sometime. Talk about defending a punch, regardless of whether he's, training people for sport or not. If I was training people for sport, I would still deal with self-defense, regardless. So I don't know. Does he, as a black belt under a Gracie, have an obligation to act like a Gracie? That on that side, on the side that does teach self-defense.
You would think so. I mean,
Yeah.
I definitely feel that way. But this might be a misperception on our points. Maybe he in fact does all that. Like the only way we would know is if we trained with him, right? We have no idea what his day to
That's
day.
true. Maybe he does. Maybe he does train self-defense and teach self-defense, and I'm totally wrong about that. But if that's the case, then he should put out some videos, on that knowledge and enlighten us, because he's got real, good technical, like he's clever with the technique in a sportive context. I'm sure if he has it, he's clever with the self-defense system as well. And we're missing out. I would say, as we progress, we do have an obligation to turn around and then reach our hand down to the people under us, as long as they are receptive. And people are receptive to him. So he's got a really good opportunity to be like, hey, look, Jiu-Jitsu has not changed. The rules, the opponents, the attacks changed. So I don't know. Maybe that kind of idea is revolutionary or idiotic. Maybe. I don't know. But I believe that I'm correct. So
Yeah, no, I am of similar thinking. The Gracie Jiu Jitsu, the Elio Gracie's Jiu Jitsu has always served me well.
it's never failed me. Now, of course, I've been, and we'll cut it after this. But of course, I've been defeated. I've been exhausted. I've been, all the stuff, right? Like beaten and whatnot. But if not that, then what for someone in an inferior position? If you simply can't aggress on them, do you just keep trying to aggress, or do you fall into a pattern of protection and defense? And if that's the case, there is no better protection and defense. And that's what we believe. So that's a different opinion than what's the best attack and all that. It's kind of not Elio Gracie's deal, although he was really good at it. Like, for example, boxing, not his deal at all. But evidently he liked to box, and he had a sharp hand, I guess. He knocked some people out. So, and last thing, as far as modern day jiu-jitsu, it can't be self-defense, because that was 1930s, whatever it was. That's not modern. We have to be talking about the modern day sport jiu-jitsu rules. Do you know who created the modern day sport jiu-jitsu rules?
No.
The Grandmaster, Elio Gracie. And you can look that up. The famous poster with him in front of the Federation Guanabara with the lightning bolt holding the red belt.
Mm-hmm.
That was at the basically the committee of the creation of what is now today the International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation. But at that time, it was the federation, which was headed up by Elio Gracie, and the chairman of the board, basically, Carlos Gracie. Elio Gracie was the final say on the the rules. He fell out with the whole thing, but that doesn't change the fact that he did create modern day jiu-jitsu. If we're talking about the rule set, he didn't create any of the techniques, maybe other than the punch block series, but he just added leverage in the best possible way to all those positions. So that's just food for thought. Elio Gracie did create modern day jiu-jitsu. If you're talking about sport jiu-jitsu rules, and that's probably surprising to a lot of guys on our side.
Oh, definitely.
And you know, but you should look that up at some point, and you'll see that it is indeed true. You'll see that people have said these are myths and blah blah blah. It depends. If you mean modern day sport jiu-jitsu, who else created that if not for the person that created the rules? Like, if we're talking about baseball, well, they were playing some kind of throw a ball around and hit it, you know, 900 years ago in China. But we're talking about modern day baseball. We're talking about the rules of baseball. You see what I mean? Like the modern day rules. That would be the person that we would say created baseball.
It's a good analogy.
So,
Yeah.
So that's just something to think about. And this podcast has definitely went off into a different direction.
Well, that happens sometimes. We got another one in the books though, and I think they're just going to get better and better. So
I agree, and no disrespect to any of those people. That's just my belief, and even people that are in our lineage and that believe as we do might disagree, and totally, that's fine. They're all legit. Those people are legit, and they could all beat me. So I say again, they're all fantastic. I just have, opinions. I have opinions on myself as well, and all that's kosher. It's okay
I
to,
I like to question everything. I like
yes,
because I might have a totally different perspective in even just a couple of years. We're just constantly learning, and
sure,
I might be pleasantly surprised. Even when it comes to some things that I think people think, or we could be totally wrong. We don't know. Like a lot of these, I mean, all these guys, we don't know these guys personally. So I mean,
that's
could
right.
be.
That's, we that's why it's just an opinion, and as we are totally open to a different perspective, or being proven wrong, or like something along those lines. So was the lineage before us, up to Elio Gracie. He wanted to see if he was right or wrong, and he always said that he was. If somebody showed up with something better, then we would be repeating that.
Oh yeah,
So
that's a good point. That's a good point.
So that is what it is, my friend, and that's why we are okay to have these opinions and discussions and disagreements or agreements. So maybe somebody will correct that if they believe so.
Yeah, no, yeah. If anybody has a better game plan, I'm all ears. And I like training other martial arts, as you know, and maybe even, I mean, really just to find out how legit it is.
Absolutely, and especially the ones that are really awesome that we already know, kind of, because we both have had experience in the arts that are just freaking awesome, and the ones not so much. Judo is awesome. It's fun. It's effective as it can be, and that's one that nobody's going to have a problem with in our lineage. You going to train jiu-jitsu, judo is fantastic. Um, so, and you going to train any of those things is fantastic, but some are better than others, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So, Dang, I can hear Sage out there trying to get me for something. So
Well, let's leave it at that, Ben. And
yeah,
I think it was another good one in the books.
absolutely, my brother, absolutely.
All right, man. Well, all right. I'll talk to you later then.
Okay, man.
All right.
All right.
Bye.